Hello YouTube, and welcome back to another episode of Discuss, the series that aims to prompt community discussion regarding certain elements of video games. A couple of notes before we start on what to expect from me in the near future. I am currently preparing for a video of Rising the Specpire in Manor of the Damned. It's actually a really good game, I'm enjoying it. I've been playing it with my my Famicom pad by Buffalo. It's pretty awesome. Expect more Air Buccaneers. I've currently got a competition running for that on my channel if you haven't seen that already as well, where you can win a retail key. There's 2 to give away. And on the 14th, I'll be able to upload videos of Creator's upcoming game, of Fat Shark's upcoming game Creator, which is quite exciting because that's still in development as well, which is pretty awesome. Okay, right, on to the actual topic of the day. It is real world versus fictional settings for immersion. And by fictional settings I mean things like sci-fi settings or fantasy settings, so things like Xenoclash, Star Wars, you know, the usual sort of stuff that everyone knows and loves. And for real world settings I'm talking about games like modern military shooters, Alan Wake. While Alan Wake, it does have supernatural elements, it is for the most part grounded in a real world setting. Okay, so we're going to start with the advantages and disadvantages of the real world. Start with the real world is relatable, obviously. We all live in the real world, we know the laws, we know how it works. So it's quite easy to settle into a game that follows these laws because it's just what you know, it's what you're used to. But the point is, and this is actually the main reason why to make this video, that can damage the immersion of a game. And I'm not saying a game has to be immersive to be a good game, but I think that's a video for another day. Anyway, yeah, bear with me, this is going to sound a little patronising to start with. Well, it might just be patronising in general. But this is my mug. It is my tea mug, believe it or not. And I drink from this every day, or near enough anyway. And if you look inside, it goes brown when I drink from it. I know that happens. I know how heavy it is. I know what it sounds like. Yeah, you should be able to hear that. And I know that if I drop it, it'll probably break, and I'll be surprised if anything else happens. So, my point is, because I'm around it so often, I know how it behaves, just like we know how the real world behaves. And if anything else happens in a video game, you'll notice it straight away. If something doesn't sound quite right, if something looks lighter than it should be, if the gravity looks off, you'll notice that straight away, and it will take you straight out of the game, and and the immersion will have been broken. For example, this is why I used Alan Wake at the start. During my Alan Wake playthrough, which I'm never going to finish, but you can see what I've done with it on my channel. I think about halfway through, I find a fridge, and I run into this fridge, and it moves like it weighs about 3 grams or something. And then instead of concentrating on the narrative or the actual game, I'm just running into this fridge over and over trying to move it. And yeah, well, that was fun. It obviously broke the immersion of the game. And this leads to things like complaints about shotguns in modern military shooters. Because with the availability of the internet and people being able to research things now, most people know that a shotgun actually has quite a long range, whereas in games, for balancing reasons and mechanical reasons, a shotgun has a very short range, and it's still fun. I mean, it doesn't compromise the playability of a game, obviously, but it kind of leads to this conflict in the realism of the game setting, but the gameplay. So hold on, let me try and phrase that better. There's a conflict in the realism of the setting the game's trying to portray, but with the more arcadey style combat. There we go, that's better. So for example, shotguns in COD or something like that have this massive cone in them, but the setting that they're in is actually quite realistic, so it leads to a lot of complaints. I'm not saying, again, it doesn't have to be immersive, but it does take a lot of people out of the game, and that they find it hard to play because of that. Okay, right, onto the fictional world. In a fictional world, you can get away with more because you don't have this grounding that the players already know, but the game still has to follow an internal logic, and it can take time to learn the rules, which you're essentially a child for that world's purposes because you've just come into that world, and I think this is often why games sort of do a hybrid of real world and supernatural for you to learn. A great example, I think this is a great immersive game, really fun to play. Xenoclash, if anyone's ever played it, the characters in that are so bizarre, they're just like birdmen, characters with metal fish bowls on their head that just walk in a straight line. But because they're all fully fleshed out, the setting of the world is so different. I know that these characters wouldn't exist in real life, but in the game, it makes perfect sense, and after a while you get used to that. The game doesn't even really bother to teach you about the setting of the world. It just drops you in a little cutscene, and that's it. And you were kind of left to figure it out, and for a while you're sort of left floundering a little, and perhaps you're not as immersed as you could be, but after a while it just becomes standard practice. And I think that's a great way of making a games and doing its setting, as it were. So, in conclusion, a shorter video than normal today, both settings can be immersive. A fictional setting takes longer to settle in, but you can perhaps get away with more, because the point is, if something's wrong, you may not even notice because you're just not used to seeing it. Whereas a realistic setting is the opposite. You know the rules, so you can settle into it quickly, but you may, you saw corpsing. You're going to settle into it quickly, but you're going to notice as soon as anything is wrong. So, I would like to know your thoughts on the subject, and what's the most immersion breaking thing that you've ever seen in the game? For me, I think it's perhaps in Oblivion. There's quite a few immersion breaking things in there, like when the homeless people's voices randomly change. But the most immersion breaking thing for me, I think, is in the arena. When the arena master is telling about one of the people that you're going to fight, he says this thing. He says, he looks like a bit of a dandy, but he says it in a really stupid voice, like that. That was really embarrassing to put on the internet. But he says it like that, and I laughed for hours over that, and I couldn't take him seriously again afterwards. Anyway, yeah, I'd like to hear the most immersion breaking thing that you've ever seen or heard in a game. So for now, this has been Harvey from WhoKnowsGaming. Goodbye.